Sir, that's a fact.
Yes, sir.
So I respect that you don't want to get into legal arguments here. I'm a lawyer, and I'm also not an expert in the First Amendment or the Wisconsin Constitution or the Administrative Code or anything. Before I went back to school at UW-Madison, I worked as a human rights litigator, mostly focusing on foreign countries. And I thought I was leaving this sort of stuff behind. But the other night, the question of gatherings of small groups of people sort of itched at me. And I was thinking about where other places, I mean, you compared other states, and I was thinking what other countries have had laws about gatherings of small groups of people. So I hit Google, and I was looking around, and I found Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe is the dictator of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
They have a law there. They've since repealed it because it was not successful. But they had the idea that you had to notify the police 4 days in advance of a gathering of more than 2 people. Why they chose 2, I don't know. So another country that has a law against gatherings of small groups of people, Burma. I looked on the State Department website. On the State Department website, Burma has a law against gatherings of more than 5 people. Syria is another country. Since the 1963 emergency law went into effect, they've had a bar on gatherings also of more than 5 people. And, you know, I have to say I'm not an expert in all of these cases, but it seems to me that in each of these cases, the idea of barring small groups of people from gathering together, whether it's a total ban or saying, well, you need to let the police know, hasn't been successful. In each of those cases, there's been a case in which people want to express their democratic yearnings for freedom, dissent, petitioning the government for the redress of grievances. And in each of those cases, people have gathered despite the law. And I think that, you know, legal questions aside, what you're going to see here is that the choice to try to bar small groups of people is only going to piss people off more.
I think in what the distinction there. And what,
Aside from a strategic policy question or a legal question, to me it strikes me as very much a moral question. And you're not a lawyer, but you're a representative of the people who's been appointed by an elected leader. And you have to decide, are you as a person going to back a policy like this? Are you going to stand here and tell us it's the right thing to do? Is Chief Tubbs going to decide it's the right thing to enforce a policy like this? When we know from experience in other countries, it's created more problems than it's solved.
and I think I would make a distinction between the gathering of 4 people. 4 people can certainly gather within the Capitol.
According to the policy.
But if you choose to have,
It's at the discretion of people here who are deciding what their purpose is, which is very vague. And this gets into legal interpretation, but it gives the discretion to the state to decide when it's okay for
if you're going to have an event.
Well, what's an event?
An event, again, is if you're looking to, I read it from the policy when we started out.
See, we're going to slip back into legal interpretation, and I'm sure that the taxpayers are going to have to pay for litigation over this, and that's too bad. And you know, maybe these things will be resolved in litigation, maybe they'll be solved case by case, or maybe this will just be a total failures policy, and you know, the next governor will have to remove it.
Or it has worked out in the courts. We believe we're on the strong legal ground to do what we've done.
I
stole the election.
I know as well as anyone that there are lots of arguments that can be made on every side of the legal issue.
There certainly
I
are.
respect that you think that you've come up with good legal arguments, and I'm sure that they'll be tested in court. But what I'm saying is that this is a moral question, and it's a question of making good policy. And I think that you really need to think about why it is that you're backing this up.
I think in part is when we look at the potential that we have for competing events in the same place at the same time, and that you've got the potential there to have a safety issue. And that's the primary concern of the Capitol Police.
I think that if you had asked representatives of any of these other governments why it was necessary to have restrictions on gatherings of small groups of people, they would have said the same thing: public safety. You know, I think it's part of the playbook. When you put in a policy like this, what is the justification for it?
And again,
it's the conception of keeping people safe. But I'm not sure that that's actually, necessary.
Well, I think also, if, let's say we do have an event where that does happen, and somebody is injured, the question would be, why didn't you do something about that? Why didn't you protect the public safety?
Were there events during the demonstrations that led you to realize that this policy was necessary? That created these particular safety dilemmas that forced your hand to say, well, we need to say more than 4 people as an issue of public safety?
I think it was a period of time from the events in February and March, taking a look at what other policies were in other states, and again, with the primary perspective.
During those times?
I'm not aware of that. I just personally am not.
It seems
but-
like if you're saying that it's necessary for public safety, then there should be an example of public safety being in danger.
And public safety is, in my mind, I think in the chief's mind, the primary thing they're looking to achieve here. It's also to provide equal and open access to everybody. And by having one group that takes an area and another group that can't, we end up in a conflict. And we're looking.
I wish you well. I think you have an extremely hard job in trying to back this up. And I hope you really think deeply about why it is that you're, willing to do this job.
Yep. And I believe what we're doing here is the right thing to do.